It started on a night when rain felt personal, the kind that bends streetlights and makes every breath taste like metal. And there I was with my daughter June tucked against me like a second heartbeat, staring through a cafe window at a lonely birthday cake, and a man who looked like he'd learned to live behind glass. I just wanted 5 minutes of warmth, not a handout, not a lecture. And when I asked if we could sit until the rain eased, he looked me over like a locked door and said, "This isn't a shelter," lit a neat stack of cash across the table like it was punctuation, and I said no to the money because I wasn't asking for that. I was asking for kindness. And then June, being 6 and fearless, blew out his candle and sang the whole song off-key. And this man, Evan, almost smiled, cut her a slice and asked where we lived, and I told the truth because lying in a room that smelled like cinnamon felt like stepping back into the storm, where I said, and he nodded slow and said he wasn't giving me money. But if what we needed was a roof, he had one, and there'd be work and food and heat, no charity. And I heard my pride make a sound like glass in my chest. But I said yes for my kids' sake, you know what I mean. The ferry to Bainbridge the next morning felt like we were hitching a ride into somebody else's chapter water and sky stitched together. In the same gray thread, his place tucked in the pines. Like a secret with windows for walls. The house manager, Priya, meeting us with kind eyes and practical hands. The guest house small and warm and smelling like cedar, and work started right away. Counters and floors and laundry that never quite ends. June trailing me like a determined shadow, narrating the machines, and sometimes I'd feel it, the watchful quiet from the main house. The man in the chair with the jawline from a magazine cover, keeping his distance but not exactly looking away, and I kept my rules: don't overshare, don't overstay, keep your dignity, get the job done. But rules get rewritten by small moments, like when June wandered into his library, asked for paper and colors like the universe owed her crayons, and he pulled a tin from a drawer that had been waiting years and told her not to make a mess without any heat behind it. And she drew us. The house with the funny roof, a woman with tired hair, a girl with a missing tooth, and a man in a wheelchair, with little rockets taped to the footrests. "These help you fly," she said, and he made a sound that was half cough, half laugh, and some part of the room thawed. Then the next day, a good physical therapist came, and 20 minutes later, a door slammed and Evan's voice went sharp. I said no, and the therapist left, stiff-backed, while June's chin started that brave wobble, so I brewed chamomile with a sprig of rosemary from Priya's jars, knocked on his study, got a clipped yes, and set the cup down in the lamplight. Steam, and said I wasn't here to lecture. I was here to offer help if he'd let me. Told him my dad was paralyzed after a fall, and I learned because there was no one else to learn it. I'm not a doctor, I am patient. I can try. And when he asked if I was afraid of him, I said no. I saw a man in pain who'd been told he had to be sharp to be safe, and we started. The next afternoon, towels warmed in the dryer, rosemary oil worked into quiet muscles, gentle ranges, long breaths, counting seconds until his shoulders stopped fighting. My hands and June made it a game because that is her religion. Hung an old triangle off a lamp and announced she'd ding whenever he felt something. Boot up the legs, and the first time I felt a flicker under my thumb. I forgot to breathe. Whispered. There, and he looked down like he might see the current under his skin and said, he thought so, a small tingling, and for 3 nights hope wired my eyes open. Priya called our place. Mission Control rocket stickers bloomed across a calendar. Curtains stayed open all day because that was the new rule: let the light move in and leave it be. I won't pretend I didn't carry pockets full of old rocks. Shelter doors that said full when I could see an empty cot. Landlords who said my kid touches things, managers who preferred. I wiped tables out of sight so guests could enjoy their pancakes in peace. You start stacking those moments until you either drown or you build. And there in that house I started building, and Evan surprised me in useful ways. He ate more when we sat with him, less when lunch arrived under a silver dome. He didn't want to be called inspiring, but when June taped a paper rocket to his chair and whispered, "Engage," he smiled with his eyes. And one evening when the rain eased, he asked if everything would change if he walked again. And I told him it already has not, because of walking, because he chose life again. And he stared at the yard like maybe the grass agreed. Then the past rang the gate, used a voice everyone recognized. But me, her name was Sloane Winters, all beige silk and gold opinions and a perfume that said, "This will be unpleasant," and the air tilted when she crossed the threshold. She talked fast about choices and regret, and how she finally knew what mattered, said love. Like it had a trademark, glanced at me with a smile that felt like a paper cut, and asked for another chance without exactly using those words. And he listened like a judge who has seen too many cases, jaw tight, eyes cool, then looked once, quick, over my shoulder, like checking a compass. "Why now?" he asked, and her answer was a single tear and a speech about knowing who she is, and who he is, and who he's with, that last part drifting to me like smoke, and I felt every old instinct line up. Shrink, apologize, make it easy to dismiss. And I was about to take June and leave before anyone had the satisfaction of asking. Then Evan put his hands on the armrests and pushed. And what happened next wasn't pretty. It wasn't a movie swell with strings. It was sweat on his temple and a tremor in his arms and the soft lock of little wheels and a low sound that translated to enough, and I was beside him. Because gravity is a law, and so is love when it starts remembering itself, hand at his elbow. No heroics, just presence, and he kept his eyes on Sloane, voice steady in that steel you get after fire. "When I lost the use of my legs, where were you?" And she flinched, like the truth had good aim, tried a complicated story with a lot of fog in it, and he cut it with one syllable. "No," then she pulled the pin she brought for last. "And now you choose this," letting her gaze drag over me and land on my daughter, a maid, and her child. How generous. And she wanted me to shrink into the paint. Yeah, that happened. But I didn't. Because I was tired of fitting a part I didn't audition for. And Evan's jaw clenched, and then eased, and he said, "The only thing that mattered, the only one insulting anyone here is you. This home has warmth because of them. I won't let you touch that." And the room settled into a new truth, and she looked at the door like it had betrayed her by staying where it was supposed to, tried one more angle about debts and obligations. And he shook his head and said, "Because love that stayed is stronger than love that left." And Priya didn't cheer, but I swear the house did. And Sloane left with her dignity cracking at the heels, and Evan sat with a soft whir and breath, like he'd climbed a flight of stairs. And I said nothing, because sometimes the kindest line is the one you keep. And that week he took 3 steps without the frame, while June drew lightning bolts around his calves and labeled them "Power Up," and I cried in the laundry room, because machines know how to hold a sound for you. We didn't do violins or speeches. We did a porch that smells like rosemary and rain, and 2 mugs cooling slower than our hands. And one evening, he said, if I wanted this to be forever, he was ready, eyes on the yard. Because sometimes truth needs a softer focus, and I didn't answer in sentences. I put my hand over his and felt a pulse that said more than talk ever could. And our wedding wasn't a spectacle. It was a backyard barbecue that accidentally included vows, Priya cried into the potato salad. The fairy horn sounded suspiciously like "Amen, Mrs." Coleman read from a book that has married more people than the courthouse, June shouted. Official, and we laughed, like a storm had finally spent itself. But life doesn't sign contracts. 2 weeks later, a photo of me pushing his chair at the farmer's market went up with a caption that used the words "gold digger" like they were flavor. The comments did what comments do. Some defended, some burned. A few women wrote me with stories. So close to mine, it felt like we shared a spine. Evan didn't read the thread because that is how a sane person lives. I read every one because part of me still walks toward fire, and the old rocks tried to fill my pockets again, until June came home with a worksheet covered in rocket stickers and said very serious propulsion works better when you point the fire toward where you came from. So I stuck that sermon on the fridge, and then we went back to that same cafe and bought a small cake with a tiny sugar crane. The barista lit a candle that wasn't for us. And we sang off key on purpose. People looked, some took out phones. We didn't perform for anyone. Because here's the truth, I wanted to tell you straight. That night in the rain, I asked for 5 minutes of warmth, and a man who thought money fixes everything learned what a child's voice can do, and a woman carrying too many quiet insults learned saying please is not a crime. And if you want an ending to fight about here, it is. Was I wrong to say yes that night? Did the power gap make it impossible to choose freely? Or did I do what any parent would do and take the door that finally opened? Tell me where you stand, what you've seen, the judgments that stuck to you, the mercies that pulled you back to shore. Drop a comment, push back, defend, confess. And if this felt like a little heat in a cold week, tap subscribe, share it with someone who needs 5 minutes of warmth. I'll be in the comments listening.